Hi, my name is Mitch Dunford with ClaimsJournal.com, and today we're here to talk about claims fraud. As everyone knows, insurance fraud is a big deal. It causes problems in the industry, it lowers profits, it raises premiums for the insured. In fact, I was reading the other day, there was a statement made by the Coalition Against Insurance Fraud that reported that over $80 billion a year are lost because of fraud. So today I have on the phone with me an expert in claims, Todd Fannin. Todd, thanks for participating in this podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
Why don't we start by having you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your insurance experience, especially on the claims side. I know that you have 28 years of combined experience. Tell us about it.
Well, Mitch, I started in claims back in actually the late 1980s as a claim rep trainee. Had no interest, no knowledge of the insurance industry. Was working as a retail manager and had to find someplace that 80 hours a week could actually increase pay and increase interest. So I answered an ad and started my career in insurance claims with no idea that it would span almost 3 decades. Starting out as a trainee at a time when claim reps handled everything from mailbox hit to $1 million trucking claim. We handled the litigation. We handled all medical payments. We actually handled a lot of our own fraud investigation at that time, and that's where I started getting a taste for what fraud is and what the investigations were like. Over the 25 years that I worked directly for insurance carriers in multiple areas of the country over multiple lines of business, I've been involved in managing branches. I was a regional manager, district manager for special investigations. Was a director for process and technology for Claims Group, and that's actually what brought me to Lexis. Joined the company 3 years ago, and my responsibility at this time is the development of solutions specifically for claims groups. In my last position, I was over the development of processes and solutions for a company, and I thought to myself, can I take this and potentially have some kind of impact across the entire industry? And Lexis has given me that opportunity to sort of play in the research lab, get feedback from our customers, and then develop solutions that hopefully will increase the efficiency and reduce the cost for carriers in general.
Awesome. It's funny, on all the interviews I have with people, I very rarely find anybody that planned on joining the insurance industry. It's like we all just kind of fell into it, and then we stay forever because it's such a great industry to work in. From your start, from your early days in the industry, how have you seen claims fraud evolve and fraud detection evolve?
You know, back whenever I started, and even say over the 10 years, the first 10 years and things, a lot of the claims fraud that really we investigated at that time were false auto thefts, arsons, and opportunistic type fraud. Somebody has the opportunity to inflate their claim a little bit more. And it was very claim specific. We were very focused on what happened in this particular claim and what's the fraud aspect in this. What I think we have seen over the past, say, 10 years, and especially over the last 5 years, it's more of a shift to 2 different things. One is the increase in medical fraud. Fraud, waste, and abuse. There was a report out from NICB that there was, I can't remember exactly the percentage increase, but a great increase between 2010 and 2012 in overall referrals that they were receiving. And the top items, both in percentage change and just total number of referrals that they were receiving, were directly related to medical fraud. And the second area is organized rings. It's interesting that we see a lot of even organized crime families, the mafias and things that we always kind of picture from television and movies that we see with, these drug sort of backgrounds and all those sort of things. They wisened up, wise guys that they are. They've wisened up, and they understand that there's less danger in insurance fraud and probably more return on it. It's white-collar crime. Who's really looking at it? And if you get caught in that versus smuggling drugs or doing some of the other things that they historically have been connected with, it's a much lower consequence. So I think those two items and how that spreads across multiple claims versus just a single claim is where we're seeing really the difference. From a detection standpoint, it used to be, almost solely left up to frontline claim reps to recognize and refer potential fraud. And again, that was usually at a claim level. The problem with that is that it relies on the experience level of the claim rep. Low experience level or low skill set often results in a low number of low quality referrals. And the detection and investigation of those required a lot of manual effort to actually find the information to support the denial. I remember one case that I had that the insured had reported that he'd been run off the road in his 3-year-old Mercedes. And it was a total loss, fairly brand new vehicle, high value. And in the investigation, something didn't feel right, especially when I went to the scene and there were no skid marks. This was parked up on the side of the road, had been towed away, but absolutely no skid marks from the accident. Found that the car had prior damage from a claim. We started looking, and in that prior claim, supposedly the car had been totaled, but he had a clean title. In order to get title history on that, I could either wait several weeks, and he was pushing very hard and claiming, delay of handling and all the things that we didn't want, or I could drive to the DMVs and pick up the information. Unfortunately, the DMVs from where I was located and where the title had been processed prior were about 310 miles apart. Back in that time, from Georgia, which was where I was handling the claim, titles could go through Tennessee. It could come in as a total loss or a branded title, be cleaned into a fresh title, resold now in Georgia with a fresh title. So I actually drove 300 miles early one morning to the DMV, picked up the title history, found that the previous title had been a branded title, drove the 300 miles back that day, and handled the claim that way. You think about all the footwork that investigators used to really put into it. They still put in a lot now, but it was a lot more then. So what we have seen occurring over the last 5 to 6 years is the increased use of technology and how that's being leveraged by the investigators. Access to public record information. You think about nowadays an investigator can simply go to a database online and they're able to order that complete title history that it took me several hours, several days to even try to develop. We're also seeing the increased use of analytics and linking technology and bringing to bear all of these things that are now starting to give a view across claims versus being so interested just in a single claim.
With the evolution of both the sophistication and the types of fraud and how fraud detection is evolving, what are some of the barriers that insurance carriers face in detecting fraud?
Well, I think there's several actually. One would be just IT resources and technology in general. The IT resources for any claims, or for any carrier, I should say, are very limited. And the claims departments, in order to even bring in some of this new technology and new capabilities, have to wait in line. They have to be able to have those IT resources dedicated to developing internally the capabilities to do some of these things if they are truly building it in-house. Another item is just big data and lack of quality data. We all hear about big data, but when we think about the amount of information now the claim systems are collecting, the amount of information that's available on the internet, the amount of information available even in data sets such as LexisNexis supplies, it's a lot of information. And how do you really work through that information? How do you understand what's in that information? And how do you stay away from paralysis of analysis? You have all this information. You don't want to look like the 2-year-old standing in the middle of the room staring at the ceiling spinning round and round.
Right.
And then another factor that's affecting it is just loss of experience in the claim rep ranks. Some companies still rely very much on the claim reps to recognize fraud and make those referrals. what we are seeing in the industry is that the experienced claim reps, the claim reps with several years in the position, are either moving up or they're moving out. And we're not getting the same quality, starts sounding like my age here, but we're not getting the same quality of people coming in the door. There are so many other opportunities now for college graduates to go into very exciting fields. Insurance just doesn't look sexy. And so the claim rep who is sitting at the desk, who is looking at that claim, may or may not recognize a good claim for referral. And then SIU, even if the referral does come over, SIU resources, they have restrictions as well. You know, they, from a headcount and a cost standpoint, with the claims organization so focused on trying to control cost as much as possible, the SIU groups, they themselves don't have as many people potentially as they need. And they're, even with those SIU investigators, there are variations in their skill sets in being able to utilize the tools and complete the analysis of all this big data coming through. And then finally, I would say it's siloed information. You know, a carrier very often is only looking into their data. They only can see what they can see, and potentially they have a piece of the pie of the organized ring, but they don't have enough information to see the big picture. So the ability to have carriers start combining their data in such a way that all of the investigators across the various carriers and lines of business within the industry, being able to see the entire picture in a single view is a challenge.
Tell me more about the concept of bill review and some of the other tools carriers can use to stay in front of fraud.
So there are a couple of items there. One is the increasing the use of predictive modeling. Being able to take the medical data that is coming in and apply very high-powered analytics to truly understand what is in that data. Another item is being able to do what we call entity resolution. You know, whenever you look across medical bill information that's coming in, first I would just want to back up and say bill review is great. Bill review addresses a good bit of what is coming in. It can identify where billing is outside of the norms, but it is very claim-oriented. We touched on earlier the need to be able to look across multiple claims. So when we're looking at this modeling, it's being able to look at all the data coming in across all the claims, applying the model to all that data, being able to understand the entities within the data. Medical billing that comes in, if you have seen it before, you may have a Dr. J. Smith at Northside Hospital, and then you might have a Dr. John Smith at Westside Medical Clinic. Are those the same Dr. John Smiths? If you're not able to roll all the information up underneath the correct entity, then it's very difficult to see the pattern. So having the capability to look at those two providers and understand this is a single provider. We actually looked at one carrier's data set and working with them on a new solution that we're looking at. And in their data, they thought that they had approximately 400,000 different providers. After we put it through an entity resolution process, it actually turned out to be closer to 250,000 providers. They actually had one provider in their data with 43 different aliases, or 43 different ways that he appeared in the data. They also had about 300 dead doctors that were billing them, and dead doctors shouldn't be billing.
Right.
So that, so to be able, if you start trying to look at how is this provider billing me, how is his treatment and billing patterns compared to his peers, if you have the bills under 43 separate providers instead of under the one provider that he is, you may not see a pattern. Once it's all brought together, you can see it. So it's that mobilization of the data at that point of being able to not only run the models on it, be able to identify the provider, but now how can I put this information together so that it's very actionable by the investigator? You think about currently, for many of the investigators, if they think that they have a bad doctor and they start now pulling together the information, that information may be in a bill review system, some of the information may be in their claim system. Maybe their system's sophisticated enough that they're able to pull reports and pull all the data from each of the claims, but likely they will have to spend time pulling up each claim, perhaps using a spreadsheet and entering in all that information. That can take weeks or months to build your case.
Right.
So being able to have a tool that brings all that information together so that you can complete that investigation in days or maybe even hours, that's where we see the change from a bill review system to a true fraud investigative tool for medical fraud, waste, and abuse.
So one of the challenges right now is getting the data, and once you have this massive quantity of data, then you have to have the analytic ability to parse through that to make sense of it. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so there's the three main challenges that we see are the three things that have to occur. Again, the entity resolution is really a key. If you're not able, you have all this data, if you're not able to look at your providers and truly understand whether I have one doctor here or 43 doctors here, then you're already way behind in the game. So you have to have a capability, you have to have data sets that assist you in identifying that doctor.
Right.
Once that's been done and all the information has been brought together, now you can start running the predictive tools and rules against that to understand how that doctor is performing. For instance, we have looked at some providers and based on certain CPT codes and ICD-9 codes, comparing them to their peers, we have seen where one doctor may have 93% of its patients receive a certain diagnostic code 98% of the time. Yet you look at a peer group within the same specialty, so another chiropractic group, and in this particular study that we did, there were about 3,000 chiropractors in this. Only 7% of those chiropractors used that diagnostic code, and they only used it on maybe 20% of their patients. So when you start seeing that kind of information across your entire data set, you truly can get an understanding that this is a doctor that I probably need to take a deeper look at. But it even goes, and we talked about the contributory nature, one of the problems that a investigator may have is that he simply doesn't have many bills for a particular doctor. So this doctor looks okay in their data set. However, if we look at that doctor and how he bills across the entire industry, we see that this doctor is just a bad doctor. Single carrier, not enough data to see them, just continues to pay them. But if they had an industry understanding of that doctor, then maybe they would be more proactive earlier in the process to be able to address that with that doctor. So data resolution or entity resolution, analysis of the data, visualization of the data, and especially a wide data set, those are really the keys.
Why is it, how do I want to phrase this? Why is it important for carriers to continue to monitor the claims process on an ongoing basis?
Claims change. As information comes in on a claim, new opportunities arise to recognize potential fraud. The claim needs to be looked at as early in the process as possible, preferably right at first notice of loss. As soon as that claim comes in, starting to run analytics on it to understand where fraud might exist and to understand it as early in the process. Too often, the claim ages a week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe even longer before a claim rep or a rules system recognizes to refer it to the investigator. Now they're already behind in the process. By monitoring a claim, by running analytics against it from day one, we're able to recognize that fraud earlier in the process, have it into the hands of the SIU investigator earlier, and address it. So proactive response to potential fraud versus reactive investigation of potential fraud. That's why we see the key.
And that can happen immediately once the claims data is entered. That's an automated process?
Correct. So we have a solution that basically from the very first day, the information starts coming into our infrastructure to be run through a fraud model and against a watch list and those sort of things. and then every time something changes within that claim file, it's resubmitted to us to go through this process again. And we provide scores, indicators, and other messaging back to the customer to help them understand what's going on in their claim, to potentially triage it to a SIU investigator for additional review. And then we provide an investigative tool similar to what we were talking about with the medical solution, that they can do a deeper dive into their data sets to truly understand how does this particular person or particular issue that has been flagged, what does that look like even across my entire data set? Is there something going on here that is more than just this single claim?
I can imagine it must be very satisfying when one of your customers uses your system effectively and is able to identify a crime and a criminal. Do you guys all high five in your office? It's like, yes.
You know, we do take great pride in being able to help the industry, especially, you know, you touched on the dollars earlier. Whenever we start talking about tens of billions of dollars, and it's chipping away at it a little bit at a time, but whenever we see the headlines that some ring has been taken down or some medical facility has come up on the radar, and we've received the feedback from our customers that is because of what we were able to do with them, yeah, we take great pride in that.
I bet. That's a good feeling. Well, Todd, thanks a lot for taking your time to talk with me today. Is there a website or another place that our listeners could go if they were intrigued and wanted more information?
They can just go to www.lexisnexis.com, and there